Hi, folks. Brian Trippett here, the Front Porch Conservative. I hope you're having an absolutely fabulous Labor Day and that you and your family have enjoyed an equally fabulous Labor Day weekend. If you have been around the electronic front porch long enough, you'll know that I have a fondness for good journalism and an even greater appreciation for the great journalists who write it. With that in mind, I had the opportunity over this weekend to interview the legendary John Kass, former Page 3 columnist for the Chicago Tribune, and now the proprietor of johncassnews.com. As he is fond of saying, writing is his oxygen, and he still has a few more spears left to throw. Our interview touched on any number of subjects: his career at the Tribune, the current state of journalism, things in Chicago, and so on. I hope that you enjoy this interview as much as I enjoyed being a part of it. With that in mind, have a happy Labor Day, and I'll see you guys soon for Chattin on the Porch. John, I want to thank you very much for coming on the Electronic Front Porch. It's an honor to have you here, sir.
I thought it was the conservative front porch, but yeah, it's great to be here.
Hey, conservatives are welcome, moderates are welcome, liberals are welcome. Everybody's welcome to talk. I have basically one rule on my electronic front porch, and that is so long as everybody's civil to each other, you may agree to disagree, but so long as everybody abides by that rule, I'm cool.
100%.
I want to thank you for coming on here. It's a great honor to have you here.
Well, good to say hi to all my friends in West Virginia and elsewhere that listen to your podcast.
Thank you, sir. Thank you much. All right. I want to start, I guess, with some past, the present, and then looking to the future, but all of it keeping an eye on the city of Chicago and Cook County proper, which has been your home, your haunt, your place where you write about so much over the course of your career. In the early part of your life, you leave college, you work for a little newspaper called then called the Daily Calumet.
It
Which
was the oldest community newspaper in the country.
Yeah, and now is known as the Daily Southtown, which is owned by the Trib, as I understand it. And again, if at any point on my questions or my background information I'm wrong, set me straight. Then in the early 1980s, you came to work for the Trib. What was the story about how you arrived in the doors of one of the most prestigious newspapers in the Midwest?
Well, I'd met a girl,
That's usually how
beautiful,
it starts.
a beautiful black-eyed Sicilian girl with long black hair, and I was like, man, I got to do something to, get a job and move on.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to marry this girl, but I couldn't do it without having an income, you know. So I was picking and choosing, what am I going to do? Am I going to continue writing for the Daily Calumet, or am I going to, I don't know, become a skip tracer? I can always find people. I can always find somebody, maybe I'd serve subpoenas, or, I don't know what I'd do. So what happened is I was working on a story with a friend of mine about the reformed mayor of Chicago, Harold Washington.
Okay.
First black mayor, a lot of controversy around him and his opponents. Anyone who opposed him was called a racist, and he was an angel. At least that was the eye in the media's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought always liked rascals, and he was a rascal, but I never thought of him as an angel.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, he had this top aide of his with a bad wig named Clarence McLean.
Okay.
Clarence McLean and his bad wig made sure that Clarence was the highest paid city official because he was very close to the Mayor Washington.
Okay.
He was also a slumlord. Reform, mayor, reform, everything was reform. But
Mm-hmm.
so we went over. I went over with a friend of mine who was working on this with me, Mark Eisman. He's the late Mark Eisman, a good man. And we went over there and we went to the buildings, and these poor girls were living in these rat holes. I mean, literal rat holes
Jeez.
with rats coming out of the holes, and they were stuffing what they start like steel wool and other things in the rat holes to try to keep the rats out. They had children. He would show up in a city limousine to collect rent. Even it was a Section 8 building, federal rent, but he wanted, in case he wanted a tip, in case he wanted a little sweetness, whatever he wanted. He was the mayor's top guy. And so we did the story on Clarence McLean. And just before we were gonna publish it at the Daily Calumet, City Hall reached out and grabbed the Daily Calumet by the ear and said, "You're not going to publish that." So now I'm starting to get pissed off. So we went to the Sun Times because I knew an editor, a friend of mine was a journalism professor and worked as the Sun Times as an editor. And I went in to meet their publisher and their managing editor. But you know the funny thing? I took all the information, the evidence, the building code records, the building records, all that. I put it in a big box, and I put it back in the back of my Omega, in the trunk of my old beater Omega.
Mm-hmm.
You're not supposed to do that. It's illegal. So, but it wasn't federal secret. It wasn't like state secrets, like, that have been alleged against Biden and Trump. It was just building codes. So they said, "Oh, okay, we'll consider it." Sun Times did. Chicago Sun Times. We'll consider it. Thank you for talking to us, and we'll talk back. We'll talk to you again soon.
Okay.
And then I went back to work. I was a City Hall reporter for the Daily Calumet. And a friend of mine at another newspaper, we had common lines, common
Sure.
PAX lines. And he picked it up and said, Sun Times calling for Harry Golden, who was the editor of the Sun Times, calling the Sun Times editor, or the Sun Times writer. Harry picked up the phone. I'm sitting at my desk, having a smoke or something, looking at him, and he goes like this. "Yes, hello?" Does one of those double takes.
Mm-hmm.
The game was up. 5 minutes later, I get a call from my source at the Cook County Clerk's office, and they said, "We've got all these reporters from the Sun Times here. They're demanding to know how do I tell them that all the stuff's in your car?" I'm like, "Hold on now. Don't chicken out now. Be a man. Cowboy up." I said, "All you got to do is tell them those files were decrepit and we're going to fix them or re-engage them. They're on microfiche and it'll take a few days. That'll keep them quiet."
Good plan.
Then I call up the Tribune. I said, I'd like to come over and talk to you. We walk with Mark and I, Mark Eisman again. We walk into the Tribune at 5 o'clock. Just getting dark. It's cold outside.
Mm-hmm.
And there are all these old men, old shirts, rolled up, smoking cigarettes in this room. And finally, one of them, named Dick Ciccone, who was the managing editor, said, "What the hell do you want? Credit?" I said, "Precisely." And that's how it started 40
Oh
years ago.
wow. Oh my goodness. And from there you went to work. Now, I was doing a little bit of background, and it said that
All that's horse poop. Don't believe anything.
no, okay,
What
okay.
can I tell you? No, ask me anything.
Okay. You had the City Hall beat at the Tribune, much like you had at the Daily Calumet, which Okay, it's Chicago. Let's be honest. The City
Yeah,
Hall beat is going to give you any number of glorious opportunities to write about all kinds of different things should you choose to do so.
mafia dons and city corrupt politicians, everything. Corrupt judges, everybody's corrupt. The whole thing is steaming. It's like a pile of compost. Like you on a cold winter day, you turn over the compost and it's all steaming. And I guess you got something underneath it wriggling around because it's
Mm.
you got to be careful. Right.
And then about mid 97, something happened that extraordinarily changed your life. You became the page 3 columnist of the Chicago Tribune. And I was reading the last column you wrote for the Trib, and you recount the story of how it happened, and it's really rather extraordinary. And for the benefit of my listeners and people who are going to view this live stream later on, would you mind telling my viewers and my listeners just how it is that the Tribune came to offer you the page 3 column that changed your life?
We thank you. Yes, we lost a great journalist, a great talent, legendary
Mm.
talent. His name was Mike Rako.
Oh, I know.
And I grew up reading Mike Rako.
Yeah.
And so anyway, he died. And nobody, I mean, in their right mind would want to follow him. The editor asked me, would you ever be interested in writing a column? I said, bleep, no, no. I don't want to write. What? You want to follow Mickey Mantle in center field? You want to go in the outfield after Joe DiMaggio? Can you do that? Do you want to do that? I mean, pick the ball player. Pick the. Do you really want to do that? I don't want to do that. I'd been married, and we were we were expect we had. I think we had children then. No, the children were just born. Our
Okay.
boys, our boys were just born, and anyway, they took me to a restaurant. Well, what happened was there was a fellow. He hates when I say this now because he hates me, but we have different perspectives. He's a
Sure.
fellow that's on of the far left, and I'm not. I I used to be what was called a centrist, and now I guess I'm called a right winger. But really, I was just a centrist Republican who believed in small business and getting government out of our lives. So he decided that he had kids. He was having twins, and he was taking some time off, and he was writing another column for the Tribune. And they asked me, "Can you fill in?" I said, "Well, yeah, I'll do one," and we could rotate them around the beats. Like City Hall would write one, and then um, all the different beats, the City Hall, the county building, all the different, federal building beats. And I could do it if we do that because I was the political writer and I was doing polls and, doing all that stuff. So I didn't have time. And then we were having dinner with some friends of mine came over. And if I remember correctly, I had just worked on a garden because I'm a secret garden. I'm not a secret gardener. I love gardening and I love growing vegetables. Those who follow my career know that my family is from a small mountain village in Greece. We're farmers. I loved it. And I was out in the backyard and I was I had a patch of clay that I wanted to get rid of. And I pulled some clay out of the ground and made a ball. And I remember putting peas there. And I put the ball up on the deck. And so we were I know this is a shaggy dog story, but there's a point.
No, go ahead.
So we had my cousins and some other people came over for dinner. Our boys were little; they wanted to see the boys. We fed them well. I remember doing porterhouse steaks on the grill, and everyone was full and happy. Peas, corn, everything. And I went out on the deck to have a cigarette because in those days I smoked. And I see this ball of clay, like a baseball.
Hmm.
And I look at the garden, which is like, I don't know, from the deck to the garden was like the vegetable garden was like from home plate to second base.
Okay.
And I see I mean, like a legitimate home plate, legitimate second base,
Sure.
60-foot bases. And I see a rabbit in there. I'm like, gosh, dang it, damn rabbit.
Hmm.
So I picked up a ball. I picked up that ball of clay. I didn't mean to kill it, but I threw a perfect like snap throw, like I used to be a catcher. And this ball went, and as it was going towards it, I was like, oh no, don't. And it hit the rabbit, boom. Rabbit up in the air, flopped on the ground, kicked one time, it was dead. At that moment, my wife comes out on the deck with our twin sons and our guests.
Oh
And they're
no.
all and she says, "Oh my God, you killed it!" So of course I'm a writer. I'm of course going to write that. I wrote it, and I'm driving around trying to find a place to dump it, like a dumpster, thinking if I got in an accident, the people at the paper would make mock of me. Like I better not die.
Right.
Anyway, so long story short, I wrote that column and I thought it would be now I just did my column. Now other people will write it. And the editor's like, what do you think you're doing? I'm like, I've got other work to do, sir. No, I want to know what you're going to write tomorrow first. Then tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. And then about 2 months later, I think he took, I think the fellow took, Mr. Zorn took 8 weeks off for paternity leave. I'm not trying to mock anyone who
Oh, I
does that,
understand.
but you know, you, I, my family was in business. You can't tell a businessman, "No, I'm just going to take 8 weeks off," or a farmer, "I'm just going to take 8 weeks." You can't do that. You got to do stuff. So they called me 8 weeks later and they said, well, let's go out to lunch. And that's when I got nervous. Like, did I do something wrong? So I went out to lunch with them, and there's a big fancy restaurant called Shaw's Fish House. And of course, they sat in the no smoking section. I'm like, damn it.
You can't even
And
give me
they
the benefit of a cigarette right
give
now.
me a
Daggone it.
cigarette. And I want a cigarette and a martini because I'm nervous. I
Yeah.
just want to chill out. And anyway, they're like, iced tea, please, unsweetened. I'm like grumbling under my breath. And then my dear friend, Anne Marie Lipinski, the managing editor of the Tribune, gives me a newspaper wrapped in red ribbon, like a roll. And I open it up and I see that there's a Pope, the Pope, Pope John Paul. Yeah.
Hmm.
And he's in the picture. I'm like, I hope your listeners won't be offended, but I said, what is this? Is the Pope Catholic, or is the bear in the picture? What's going on? And she's like, don't be silly. That's page 3. That's your page.
Oh, wow.
I was like, wow, yeah. And that was
Oh,
it.
and for
So I don't know how many years, 20 years, 25 years later, I did it for 20 years,
wow,
25. Yeah.
that's amazing. And for
4 a week.
24 week for 25 years. Jeez, man,
Hey, I'm a young man. I'm only 32,
well,
man.
yeah, exactly. I mean, it's the lighting that makes it look, like, you got gray up there or something,
Right.
Um, as I was reading, as I was doing my background, and for 25 years, you enjoyed the page three column of the Chicago Tribune 4 days a week, writing about everything under the sun imaginable. Some some things political, be it Mayor Daley or Mayor Lightfoot or now the current administration, etc. Some things whimsical or anything in between.
Yes.
But then something happened, and you chronicle this, and I kind of put it together from columns that you have on johncassnews.com and then from your last column that you had with the Tribune. And I want to introduce my question with a quote.
Mm-hmm.
For those without a clue, you should know that left-wing billionaire George Soros, who I dared criticize when I was lead columnist at the paper, had elected do-nothing Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx. For criticizing Soros, I was defamed and publicly humiliated by the paper and the neo-Marxist newspaper guild that controlled the newsroom. What was my sin? Writing the truth about my hometown. I asked a question. What happened to an America where you could freely speak your mind? I couldn't take it. My stomach kept turning in disgust for what had happened to journalism, to the Chicago media. Once the paper offered me a buyout, I took it. If I had stayed, I would have been stabbed in the back. You make the statement that something profound in a bad way happened at the Tribune following the BLM riots of 2020. That
Not
somehow,
just the Tribune,
okay,
basically all of America,
okay, okay,
in big cities all over America, Los Angeles, Chicago, Detroit, all of them, Minneapolis, right? I mean,
mm-hmm.
it burned for 3 days, and the governor's wife opens up the window. I love the smell of what? What do you like? Like the smell of victory? Is this a
Yeah,
movie?
yeah. It's like an apocalypse now or something,
Yeah,
some
right,
weird version
right,
of it.
right. So, law and order, without law and order, you have anarchy, as we
Mm-hmm.
can see in all the cities. And the left is determined not to discuss in terms that will reflect badly on them. But I don't know how you. I mean, we got the big controversy going now about Trump went out to Arlington
Yep.
Cemetery, and then you have Kamala Harris screaming that, "Oh my God, you've destroyed the integrity of the military." And then you find out that all the parents of the dead from Abbygate wanted Donald Trump there, and he didn't make a big fuss. He didn't make a big thing. He didn't come with trumpets. He just showed up quietly and was supportive. And then the left went crazy. It's the same kind of thing. They don't want to engage what threatens them. And what threatens them to me is that they let the cities burn. They let the cities be destroyed. You know why? Because they wanted to get Trump. And they ran this. This was the real insurrection. All those cities, all those buildings, all those downtowns broken and destroyed, and all of it swept up mostly by media that wanted to protect the left.
Tragically so. The thing that I found really profound about what happened to you and other longtime individuals who'd worked at the Trib was that, let me ask you this. I mean, even at a newspaper like the Chicago Tribune, which I had always perceived, and I think many people have, as the conservative newspaper in Chicago, whereas the other paper, which shall not be named, not so much, there would be people in the newsroom. Okay, there are different ideologies, but the paper itself generally is understood to be a conservative institution. Did what happened in 2020 at the Tribune just sort of Did it happen overnight? Was it a creeping thing? And finally, the riots were like the excuse to, like, we're going to purge the newsroom of people we don't agree with. What happened?
I think what happened is that over time, the newsroom and newsrooms generally, like at our place, at the Tribune, at the New York Times, for example, I mean, the New York Times posted an op-ed by a senator, Tom Cotton, and that freaked all the snowflakes went up in arms and
I
freaked
remember.
out. Remember?
I remember that one. Yeah,
All right, so same thing going on with me. They attacked me mercilessly. They called me a religious bigot. I did not refer to Mr. Soros's religion or lack of religion.
sure.
I didn't even mention it. It doesn't interest me. That's not important. It's just not. But they tried to make it a big deal. And I have to say that there were good friends of mine who stood up for me. One is Tom Bevan of Real Clear Politics. He had his Washington bureau chief investigate it, and Carl Cannon did a very fine job investigating it. Clearly, Charles Lipson, the professor from the University of Chicago, was another, writing in the Spectator, and my friend Dan Proft, um, conservative radio talk show host and author or host of the Counterculture podcast, is another. And yeah, so I'm sorry if did I lose the thread of
No,
our
no, 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 not
discussion?
at all. Not at all. You're fine.
Now, it might be the stroke and the double, triple, quadruple bypass and all that. I don't know.
No, you're doing absolutely fine.
Okay.
Absolutely fine. So let's move to the present. And as I do, for those of you who are just joining this interview, my name is Brian Trippett. I'm known in social media as the Front Porch Conservative. I'm joined by legendary Chicago writer and columnist John Kass. The present.
Wait, hold on. I have to interrupt you. And I'm right now at johncassnews.com.
Abs, and we're
So
going to go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. We're going to get into that subject.
where you can
Absolutely.
get it, we can get a good cup of Midwestern common sense, because I think that the media has lost common sense
Oh,
in so many areas. So anyway, yes, Brian, I'm sorry.
and no, you're fine. You're fine. And I want to introduce folks to johncassnews.com with the following. I'm a writer. This is from your website. I'm a writer. I write. Writing is my oxygen, and there's plenty left to write about. As I told you in my last column, I am no Laertes to putter around in the garden talking to plants. I love my garden, but plants are plants, and I don't talk to plants, and I still have a few spears left to throw. And that is johncassnews.com. First of all, and I'm not just saying this because I'm interviewing right now, I genuinely mean this. As a consumer of news, my compliments to you and the designers of the website. It is very user friendly, very easy to navigate, and it's just chock full of all kinds of neat, fun, and as you say, the cup of common sense. Now, I do have to ask you about two things that I found that are a little on the humorous side. The
How did the
golden.
how did the how did the cow get in the ditch? You got to ask Jimmy Banakis for that.
I'll ask him for that. But the one that I'm thinking of is the Golden Matzah of the Month award.
Yeah. Let's
Okay,
go to
send
let's
me.
do some linguistics.
Okay,
Mutza. Say it with me.
Mutza,
Mutza.
Mutza.
There's a little N in there before the T, but I just skipped that over because it would confuse people.
Okay,
Mutza. And
Mutza.
this is what I'm not doing it to you or
No,
to
no, no.
any of the listeners out there,
That's fine.
viewers, but this is, you take your hand, nah, like that. Nah, nah, nah. You do a double, a triple, you do under your legs, between your legs, you can do whatever you want, behind your back. I've seen it done all ways. This was invented by my ancestors, the inventors of democracy, many years ago in Greece, and so we do the mutza. The socialists tried to outlaw it, like they tried to say that if you were a cab driver and you but were found to give the mutza, to someone, you might lose your license, and that was all. They didn't care. They kept doing it.
So if one is the recipient of the Golden Mutza of the Month award,
You worked
uh,
hard. You worked hard to win it.
oh really? Now, what does one do to become the winner of the Golden Mutza of the Month award?
Did you ever see a movie called one of my favorites called Idiocracy? You ever see that?
I have heard of it, but I cannot say that I've seen it. But I've heard of it.
Two movies that everyone has to see to get ready for this election in November. Idiocracy, which is basically if you took all the idiots and let them have kids and encourage them to have more and more kids, and all the smart people, because they didn't have $1 million in the bank, will stop making children, what would happen? The world and the country would be run by idiots, right?
Okay.
And that's Idiocracy. So it's a hilarious comedy, and I recommend it. And the second movie is, I don't want to get too like esoteric Frenchy on me, but it is a French movie called Ridicule,
Okay.
and it's set in the years before the French Revolution, where the only currency that was true currency in the court of the king was ridicule. They would mock you would be mocked mercilessly. It was all about mocking people. And then the guillotine came. You know, people said, "I have enough," and those are the two. Now I'm seriously old, because what was the question about?
Uh,
Oh,
what does
well,
one do to become a winner of the Golden Mutza of the Month award?
you have to be a total moron. Like, okay, think of stupid stupid pet tricks,
Yeah, I remember.
stupid stupid criminal tricks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how many times it's always a Florida man. The Florida man did something, the Florida man got bit by an alligator. But it's not just the Florida man. It could be a Chicago man, a Los Angeles man, or woman. And people find stupid things, and they send them to me on Facebook. There's some nominations still open right now as we speak. So get your people to write in.
Okay.
And people nominate like okay, here's one. People are nominating Kamala Harris. Like, that's really hard. But anyway, Tim Waltz and so forth. Um, Other people are nominating. Here's one. How about Mark Zuckerberg, the person that? What exactly did he do besides hit democracy in the head with a rock and keep hitting it again and again until brains came out of it? That's what he did.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh well, I didn't know it would be so bad. Yeah, it was, sir.
Mm. Yeah, and then says, "Well, I had no idea spending $400 million was going to somehow affect the 2020 election." No, I
419.
oh, jeez.
So that's the mutza. You win it, and you get a golden mutza, and that is like, did you ever hear of our former governor, or one of our former governors, a crook who went to prison, named Democrat named Rod Blagojevich?
Yes, I know of Governor Blagojevich.
And poor Governor Blagojevich, he said the famous words, "I've got this thing, and it's bleeping golden."
Mm,
And
okay,
ever since he said that, I've always introduced the Mutza of the month with that. Yeah.
and understandably so. Now, the other thing that I found on the website is a one-word phrase, and you're probably going to need to correct me on pronunciations again. Shomalon.
Very good, but you're kind of going down to New Orleans with that one.
Okay.
Let's go to Italy,
Okay.
because it's an Italian word, chumbolone.
Chum Bolon. Okay.
Chumbolone is a clown, a fool. And so there was an idiot, stupid. Don't be a chumbalone. So there was a cop in Chicago named Pasiafumi,
Okay.
but he changed his name to be more politically correct with what he was doing. So he called himself Anthony Twan Doyle, like a good Irish name, Doyle.
All right.
But here's the thing, he was also working for the Chinatown mob, which is a
Mm,
part of Chicago, Chinatown. And the mob boss was talking about taking some witnesses and subjecting them to tortures, including a cattle prod.
ugh.
So here's Mr. Doyle on the witness stand. I was there. Things sometimes fall. I'm lucky, like blessed by God, they fall into my lap. But here Doyle was saying, uh, they said, Mr. Doyle, why did you say all this? Why did you agree to all this? You kept nodding your head. You nodded your head. What were you thinking? Because the FBI had taped him doing all that, nodding his head. Yeah, uh-huh. He said, what were you thinking? And he turns to everyone in the courtroom and says, oh, well, I didn't want to look like an idiot, like a chumbalone. And so now we've trademarked the chumbalone and we have it on hats so you can all find it. It's a good hat to have. It keeps the sun out of your eyes, and you're declaring to the world that you're not an idiot.
Oh, that's great. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Couple other things that I found on the website, and one of them is very touching, and and I can definitely understand the why. The Palakare project.
Ah,
I've had the opportunity to. I'm still working my way through some of it, but it is genuinely neat. And for my listeners, would you please tell people the genesis of the Palakari project and what exactly it is?
the Polycotty Project is my father, my late father, Spiro Kass, talking into a microphone. Um, I recorded him, and I recorded him for the benefit of my wife, who was a modern dancer and choreographer.
Mm-hmm.
We were newly married. She was contacted by the Illinois Arts Council and Columbia College, where we went, and um, they wanted to do a dance concert, like a ballet, and they would produce it and light it and everything. It would be held in a beautiful hall. And she was thinking what to do with the idea. So she wanted to do this idea about an immigrant story, but not any immigrant. This is a story of a young man who fought the Italians, the Germans, and the communists. When the Germans and Italians were gone, the Stalinist elements of Greece took over the country. And this poor guy had already fought 10 years in combat, not 10 years uh, watching TV, 10 years in combat with a rifle in his hand. And then he had to fight, then he was fighting the communists.
Wow.
And that was my father. When she did that, thank you for mentioning it because he was my hero. And, there's so many dads who are so fumbling, bumbling dads on
Yeah.
television. Dads are made to look like idiots.
Yeah.
But you know what? He wasn't. He wasn't an idiot. He did tell me, though, years ago, I was upset when I was a little kid. I was upset working at the store. That's what we called Greek daycare. You
Mm,
worked at the store with your dad. There was I'm going to watch TV and eat a bunch of pie and get 300 pounds. No, no, you worked. So I was mad at the customers who were bugging me about milk in the cooler because they all wanted me to go in the back of the cooler and get the newest milk that just came in.
Yep.
And I'm
Yep.
like, this milk is good. And they're screaming at me back and forth. I'm 10 years old. And I'm like, I screw it. I'm done. And my dad came in. He's like, what's wrong with you? I said, Dad, I want to quit the store. I want to sell the store. Let's go back to Greece. Let's go to the village. I'm done. Can't stand these people. He's like, oh, okay. He lights a smoke and he sits there and we're in the cooler, both of us together. He's like, yeah, okay, that's good. You want to get, but we need money. How are we going to have money to eat? He's like, Dad. I said, Dad, I'll we'll get goats and milk and cows and sheep, and I'll milk them, and we'll make yogurt and cheese. You said yogurt? This is before Greek yogurt became a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I said, yeah, because the Americani don't know anything about yogurt. They don't know. I was actually a little saltier. He said, oh, okay, that's good. We can make yogurt and we'll do that for a living. I go, yeah, Dad. But he said, one thing, John, what do you do if the cow or the sheep or the goat kick over the pail? Because they do that occasionally. They kick. What are you going to do to the cow? Are you going to kill it? Are you going to take the pole from the wall in the barn, something like a iron pole, a bar, and just hit it in the head and kill it because you're mad? I'm like, Dad, what's wrong with you, Dad? Why would I kill the cow or the goat? They're making money for our family. Why would I want to destroy that? Pardon me.
That's fine.
Now I'm 10 years old. My dad was a strong guy, big hands, thick, like a working with his hands all day, all his
Yep.
life.
Mm-hmm.
He leaned over. He said, you don't want to kill it? And he stared at me and he hit me in the head 3 times with that finger. He's like, do you get it? Do you get it now? And I'm like, oh, okay, Dad. I mean, I told him, okay, I get it. I get it, Dad. And from then on, I never argued with my customers, and I treated them, they were giving my family life.
Yeah.
They were giving my brother and my brothers and my mom and my dad, they were giving us life. And I've always treated them that way since. And it bothered me that companies didn't treat their customers that way.
Yeah.
Like you don't mock them, and although that's what we do in the Tribune, that's what we did in the newspaper business. We would make fun of them
Yeah.
because they weren't sophisticated or they weren't, whatever it was.
Yeah. It always amazes me the disconnect between the consumers of news and those who purport to provide it to them. And in this respect, and you can speak to this way more than I can, the disdain of the people who are the providers of news. You know, the news tells you, wow, it's dry as a bone outside.
Yeah.
Consumer of the news looks out the window and goes, the heck are you talking about, man? It's pouring cats and dogs out there. Oh,
Right.
don't you know? I work for a journalism institution. We know exactly what the weather's doing right now, and you should listen to us. But I can see
Oh,
it with my own eyes. It's raining out there.
how dare you
Yeah,
question us? Yeah. Right.
exactly.
Right.
Anyway, um, tell you what, with the remaining time we've got, let me hone in on Chicago specifically, because as someone who has walked its streets, talked to its people, an observer of all things Chicago, I've got to ask you some of these questions. And for those who are joining us, my name is Brian Trippett on the Front Porch Conservative. This is John Kass, the proprietor of johncassnews.com. And
Thank you, Brian.
oh, I will. Hey, I am a content creator in my own way through my own means. Believe me, I will plug everybody's stuff as much as I possibly can. So you got no
You're,
problems on this side.
you're welcome to pitch me a column idea.
I'll, I'll do my best. Let me ask you about.
Sorry.
No, no, that's fine. That's fine. Let me ask you
Allergies.
about Chicago.
Okay.
When I was living in Illinois, and this was from 94 to just early 2000, the following individuals held office in either Chicago proper or Cook County in general. Richard M. Daley was the mayor.
Right.
The Cook County prosecutor was Richard Devine,
Yes.
and the Cook County sheriff was Michael Sheehan.
Yeah.
Today, the mayor is Brandon Johnson, the Cook County prosecutor is Kim Fox, and the sheriff is Tom Dart. And then there are some figures in the shadows like Tony Preckwinkle and CTU's Stacey Davis Gates. Now, the
Yes.
common denominator is all these individuals are Democrats. The uncommon denominator is the Daley, Devine, and Sheehan seem to be able to administer their offices with a certain amount of efficiency and function such that people in Chicago and Cook County lived a reasonable life and they didn't have to worry about too many different things.
Right.
And the latter, Johnson, Fox, and Dart, are basically administering, the modern day Mogadishu on the Michigan. It's just crazy.
100%. 100%. And why is that?
That's a
Because
great
of the
question.
Soros prosecutors. Why
Mm-hmm.
is that? Why is this happening? Because Mr. Soros, in his wisdom, argued and through his money and the people he supported, their argument was law enforcement is racist. Law enforcement is white. Law enforcement is racist. Law enforcement hates black people and brown people. Law enforcement is terrible, and we got to get rid of it. Defund the police, blah, blah, blah. What happens? The thing is, when you do that, when you demoralize police, look, there's not saying that there's nothing wrong with cops who do bad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I'm all about pursuing the wrongdoers. But when you change the equation so that the law abiding people are afraid to step out of their house in daylight, this is why I went after Soros. And this is what the Tribune Union and all of them push back on. You can't have a society without law and order.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. And so we have Chicago. Now I went to I moved to Indiana, not too far from Chicago. I still get in there. I could get in about an hour something. And I've stopped at a gun store because I didn't want to have to wear a stick in Chicago, which is illegal, and carry a stick and go for my insulin at Walgreens. Okay.
Yeah.
I just didn't think it was worth killing somebody over. But I went into this gun store and asked, what's the rules here? And the kid behind the counter, man, actually grown man, he looked at me and he recognized me because you're John Kass from the Tribune, right? I'm like, yeah, but what's the rules here? He said, the rules are you left a communist country and now you're in the United States of America.
Wow. Wow.
people around here aren't worried about thugs breaking in and breaking into their house and destroying them and killing them. Not here. Wonder why. I know why. So do you.
Yeah. There's a quote that's attributed to, I think it's Thomas Heinlein, that an armed society is a polite society. And I don't disagree with that notion in the slightest.
I'd like people to talk in those terms, like Western. Like I remember reading a column where people should wear their 45s on their hip outside, like the cowboys,
Mm-hmm.
because they all talk politely to each other. You ever wonder why?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you
Well,
don't want to make a mistake. Right.
yeah. In my home state, we have open carry, and I mean it's nothing depending upon where you go or who you're with to be at a restaurant somewhere and you see even a lady with
Yes.
a semi-automatic pistol on her hip, and no one bats an eye, no one says a word, no one freaks out, no one gets nervous.
No one clutches their pearls. Oh my
Yeah,
God. Yeah.
yeah, no one, no
Grandma's
one.
got a 9 millimeter. Oh my God.
As
Yeah.
a matter of fact, if we find out grandma's got a 9 millimeter, we're getting behind her if the trouble starts because we know grandma's going to take care of
There you go.
it. I mean, yeah, because it's going back to the current leadership. There's a quote in one of your columns, and I loved this. I'm from Chicago, where we're taught not to believe in coincidence. The Democrat political masters beat this lesson into us daily. The lesson is this: gross negligence and purposeful intent are indistinguishable. Are these people just that incompetent that are currently administering Chicago and Cook County, or are they just trying to ruin what is one of the best cities in the Midwest?
It's a great city. It's been ruined. There's no coincidence. But also, I don't think the U.S. Secret Service runs Chicago, do they? But they had gross incompetence, gross negligence, and almost created a firestorm that once you kill a president, you cannot put that genie back in the bottle.
No.
And going back to what my father says, I don't think it's in the Polycati project. Polycati means like brave, means a brave one. But he always told us about the Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
Politics is one thing, but when the blood gets in your eyes and your friends are dead or your family is shot and you know who did it, then you can't see straight. You can't think straight.
Yep.
And what I worry about in those this constant outrage and screaming. I know what it's about. It's about women wanting abortion. They're screaming like shrews because they want abortions. I get it, what they want, but we're creating a world where we're inviting conflict like the one that he barely survived. And
Yeah.
thousands, I'll tell you, thousands of people in Greece, there are thousands of them stacked up dead outside the reservoir in Athens because of that.
Jeez.
We don't want that.
Yeah.
That's why he came here. That's why we're here. We're Americans. Where you can, the shopkeeper can sit down at a restaurant with the doctor. Nobody, nobody snickers like, how, what do you think you're sitting with the doctor?
Yeah.
Nobody talks like that. This is, yeah, every day. I don't know. I don't know what's in store for us.
Yeah, that was the one question I wanted to bring the interview to a conclusion on. I mean, you have covered Chicago and Cook County and the state of Illinois for years, either at the Tribune or on johncassnews.com. I see, and again, this is from an outsider's perspective looking in. especially ever since the Biden administration has been moving illegal immigrants into the city of Chicago. They're taking up old schools, they're taking up gymnasiums, they're taking up empty buildings. I'm seeing these videos, be it on TikTok or on Instagram or on
Sure.
Twitter, et cetera. And the citizens of Chicago, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's a meeting of Chicago City Council proper that Brandon Johnson's presiding over, or if it's on the streets or wherever it is. People
100%.
are in Chicago are just furious. And I guess here's the question that I have to you. Granted, we're talking about Chicago, a city that is steeped in big city, big machine politics and has been controlled by Democrats for the better part of a century or more. But is there something happening? And again, it may not show up in this election or the following election or the next municipal election, but is there something that's beginning to happen, in your opinion, that the citizens of Chicago have said, you know what? I may have voted for this group of people for this many years, and my dad may have, and his granddad, but I can't do it anymore.
I would like to think so. I don't, I'm not of the group that thinks voters are stupid or Americans are stupid. I think American people are good people and they're not stupid. And maybe we're not as lettered as some of the sophisticates. I'm certainly not. But we have common sense, or at least that's what kept us alive.
Yeah.
And the problem is the way I see it, we mock and mock each other until there's no country left. We say things and there's no country left. And the blood gets in our eyes
Yeah.
and there's no country left. And then what? You know, when we're done with this interview, I'm going to go see my brother, have a go visit him, see my mom who's 94 years old.
Oh,
I'm bringing him a mess of tomatoes that I cooked. I mean, that I grew out in the backyard. And then he might make a BLT out of it. I don't know. I hope so. And then I'll go to that movie, Reagan, the
mm,
one that's out
yeah.
now. I want to
Dennis
see it.
Quaid.
I want to see it because I, I, he was the greatest president of my young lifetime. And I think you might disagree with me, but I think Donald Trump, for all he's been put under, and I can't believe that the man shot and defiled and deriled and whatever, besmirched and stood up to it. And Reagan talked about that shining city on the hill, which is from the Bible.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've always wanted to think of America that way because I think of America as the son of immigrants. I didn't know where my place was. I'd hear people, I'm American. You're not American. What are you, Greek or something like that? And I'd be like, oh, what? So I played baseball. I played football. My father's like, hey, don't you want to play soccer with the head? I'm like, Dad, I'm American. I'm not born in the village like you. We play football with our helmets,
And sometimes without.
sometimes without. And see, yeah, I've been to a lot of emergency rooms with my boys. But through all that, I've just loved being an American.
Yeah.
And I wish I don't know what I really sometimes don't know what the left is screaming about. Really.
Yeah.
I mean, the media and the left are part of they're part of their tag team, like the Democrats and the media.
Yeah.
And I remember when we had all views represented at newspapers.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when there was a guy named William Safire who wrote for the
New York
New York
Times.
Times,
Yeah.
and Royko wrote for the Tribune, and John Kass wrote for the Tribune. Not no longer.
No. No. There's one thing though that I will give you this, and you are now part of a very unique club. And let me give you some of your fellow club members, and we'll wrap it up real quick. Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, and I could probably list on a whole bunch of other people that you at one time worked in if I may use the term, corporate media,
Yes, you
and
can.
now you're independent creators on your own, and you are the captains of your own ship. And given your background with your father, there's probably a real appreciation that's like, you know what, I'm taking johncassnews.com and daggone it, we're building this thing. And
Yes, sir.
I'm still going to get the oxygen in my blood, and I've still got things to say, and there's still spears to throw. So it's got to be thrilling for you.
It is thrilling, and it's a great feeling. Um, I've had some good friends, good advice. They told me they're going to come back and be your friend. The Tribune will be your friend. And then they will stab you in the back and destroy you. Don't be stupid. And I started this thing, and I've always loved the story of the Odyssey of Odysseus. That's from the spears. That's where the spears to throw comes from, because his father was the old man who threw spears. And now now my sons are in their 20s, pushing 30. And I guess I'm the old man throwing spears.
Well,
I like it.
well,
But
don't you stop. Don't stop at all, because in this hour, what is desperately needed is as you call it, the cup of common sense. I call it the ability to stand at the parade route and say, no, the emperor doesn't have a new set of clothes on. He's naked as a jaybird, you know? So no,
yeah,
don't quit at all. John, I want to thank you so much for all of this. Where where can my listeners, where can viewers of this interview go to help you, support you in your work, and keep giving you the ability to throw the spear?
and throw some for yourself. Come to johncassnews.com, where you can read columns, maybe even write some. There's a email links for that. I will edit heavily. I don't edit. I it's my name on a website. I'm careful about my reputation. But come to johncassnews.com, and with a K, John Kass with a K, and listen to the Chicago Way podcast on WGN Radio, WGN AM. We have podcast links and where you found it, and the news links at the website. And I really appreciate your time, Brian. You're very thoughtful.
Well, no, thank you for being here. And hang on a second. We'll say some proper goodbyes to folks who are on the electronic front porch. Thank you so much for being here, listening to this conversation. If you're not subscribed to my channel on YouTube and Rumble, please go ahead and do that. You can follow me on Twitter at the Front Porch C1. Thank you all so much for being here. I hope everyone has a great weekend, and we will talk to you soon. So have a great day, folks. Then would you please do me some favors? Number one, please subscribe to my channel on YouTube and on Rumble. By the way, YouTube subscribers, please double check your subscription. For some strange reason, the numbers keep going up and down, and I just wonder if somebody at YouTube isn't maybe playing games with me. Second of all, please give this interview a thumbs up, both on YouTube and on Rumble. Also, leave some comments. For some strange reason, that funny fellow, Mr. Algorithm, likes it when you do both things. And finally, please share this interview around. I'd like it to get out to as many different people as possible. Again, thanks for listening. Have a happy Labor Day, and I'll see you guys soon for our next session of Chattin' on the Porch. Till then, have a great day.